The what?
The title of the exhibition, Italia and Germania. I think it's really interesting, of course, you a German artist here exhibiting in Italy with this kind of title.
It's so obvious and so easy.
And then, of course, this and also the history of these two countries are quite.
We should maybe move a bit because it's a church-like echo.
And yeah, I was saying that also the history of these two countries is quite similar. They are young countries. They were born in the 1861 for Italy and 1871 for Germany, right?
Exactly.
So they were more or less in the same decade, and they shared a lot of things during the 20th century, especially the growth of nationalism, and they shared
fascism,
tragedy, for example, in the Second World War, and so I would like to ask you if you see that this kind of parallelism, not politically or historically, but just like in general, this kind of relationship is going on, and in which sense you're interested in comparing these two countries. And
started at Roman times even. Of course, interest in all these things. It's a very interesting story, especially about Germany and Italy, the two countries in kind of axis from the north to the south. But I cannot seriously show or deal with that kind of interesting issue in my work. It's just a title that is open to anything. Playing with the historical and political issue is not really part of my work. What for me was the starting point here, the interesting fact that there is a painting called Germania und Italia. It's done by Johann Friedrich Overbeck, a German painter living in Rome in the 19th century. And this is a kind of version. It's on the invitation card as well. That is something substantial for me as an artist, as a painter. To be honest, seriously, what the title can be taken, can be used for, or what the meaning of the title could be, seriously. I mean, we are all professionals in a way. You more the curators, I'm the artist. It's a metaphor. Take Germania and Italia is a metaphor for, well, for what? I hope you could accept that it's just a metaphor for any kind of duality. So, of course, what is selected here, the work, is connected to the title of Germania und Italia. There are only German painters and Italian painters are used. But the duality is more, apart from the selection of the two countries, or the painters of these two countries, is a more formal thing about painting. I could show different aspects of duality. I think duality is a better word. Dualism, the curator told me, is something very specific, philosophical. I don't know, so let's call it duality. So I think there are a few dualities, formal, painterly dualities visible in the show. I wish you would find some yourselves.
You had mentioned that all of the artists that you referenced or lifted the image from in this exhibition are either German or Italian. What importance do you place on the viewer being able to recognize the source?
What do you mean to recognize?
To be able to place the original painting that you've used the imagery from. how important is it that they recognize that or be able to identify that work of art?
That you find the source?
That you can recognize it when you look at it and say, oh, well, that's clearly a painting by David or Offenbach or...
It's not that important because probably nobody will know these artists. They're not art historians' heroes. Do you know Anton von Werner? You probably might know Johann Friedrich Overbeck because it's more part of art history, but you won't know Federico Farufini, Francesco Hayes. I prefer in a way to select the more unknown artists.
So it is also not, you do not want to make this connection obvious. For example, for curation, from a curational point of view, we could choose to place the source or like the Overbeck painting right next to it, or a little version of it. Would that be changing the your message, basically, your artwork?
Well, it would disturb the exhibition.
It was disturbed. That's interesting. So is that also why you chose not to put titles, for example, to keep that? So you're more hiding that connection, or more?
No. Well, it wouldn't make sense within this show. But we're just thinking about the production of the catalog, and I think we're going to show the sources.
Interesting.
But probably just in black and white.
Okay.
It's still work in progress. I don't mind that you see the sources.
Okay, so it doesn't really change the reading of your artwork to know or not know the sources?
Well, of course, it will change the perception for the viewer. Once you know what is there on that painting, we'll change it. The uninformed approach is different from when you know it. But both is possible. Both is, for me, it's okay. Both. It's a question of the flow of information. So I don't think I cannot imagine that after you know the source, you say, "Well, yeah, no." It's maybe a bit less mysterious, but that's not bad either. I quite like to demystify anything in art and culture.
Sort of on that note, and coming off from also Stefano's question, I'm interested in this idea of access to your works. So access, and in the sense that you have these historical connotations, and sometimes they're historical characters and sometimes not. But also there's this progressive move towards abstraction, and so sometimes the portraits especially are very blurred. And I'm just wonder what your intentions are with that as well, and if there's a question related to access on the part of the viewer with your works.
Well, the more abstract it becomes, the more difficult the approach for the viewer is, of course. That's my playing around with the possibilities of painting the abstraction. I try to stretch out the field I can work towards. The more abstract, like that one, or the more detailed, like the seating lady or the landscapes. But what I think is important to be mentioned is that I never do an entirely abstract work, as I don't know what abstract art is about. I just don't understand it. And for me as a painter, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't know where to start, what to do else, what to do next, how to check and control. As there is no field of reference in abstract art, as opposed to figurative painting. Whenever it is, it looks like almost abstract, I think there's always at least a little hint for figurative identification. Even there, I hope it's more a lens.
sorry.
Pardon?
I was going to say, so would you say that it's more of a framework for you as an artist to be using a source material and to use the title?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a way of you sort of exercising some sort of control or limitation on what you produce?
Yes, yeah. I hate to invent something. I hate the attitude of a lot of other artists to show their fantasies or their dreams or their emotions or their feelings. I don't like it. I think I'm more obliged to deal with issues of public and historical importance and political importance. In a way, at least.
So have you always worked in that vein? Have you always worked mostly with appropriation and with historical images?
More or less, yeah.
And did you develop your practice like from the 1980s when appropriation was kind of more used as a thematic within art, or has it just been sort of your own personal endeavor?
It's more personal because my career took a quite strange way. I started to study art very young, at the age of 18, and had been in touch with modern art beforehand. I was taken with, my parents took me to modern art exhibitions. I saw all this pop, Lichtenstein, Wolf Forstel, everything. And so I wanted to become an artist. Studied art and did anything that was supposed to be the right thing to do. My heroes, maybe quite interesting, the list of my heroes is Michael Asher, Bruce Nauman, Blinky Palermo, Daniel Buren, Marcel Brotas, very big, very important thing, and so on and so on. Dan Flavin, most of all, Michael Asher, Blinky Palermo, using a given space. And I did my first solo show at the age of 24 in a gallery in Munich, where I manipulated the given light system. Just covered the light, kind of beamers, not beamers, what they're called. Well, anyway, I covered the light system with two complementary colors that added each other towards the most neutral white. So really a modern next stepism art installation in those days to show the context of the gallery as part of the conditions of modern art. And after that I kind of said, I finished. I fucked it all up. No. Finito, basta. I don't know why, it's a long story, personal things, and then I started to do what I'd never done before. I did everything, installation, sculpture, photography, wall painting, manipulating the light system or repainting the given parts of the space, anything in the sense of Michael Asher and all these other artists. And then after I had finished academy, I stopped all that and started to become a painter. And the kind of painting that was the most restricted and the most conservative, we call it Tafelbildmalerei, figurative Tafelbildmalerei, oil on linen, which I had never done before, so completely lost. And started as an autodidact. I taught what I achieved, what I learned, I taught myself. And that was right from the beginning, was a bit kind of, not appropriation, but it was old-fashioned always. The subject matter was, from the beginning, old-fashioned.
Is that because you felt, if you're teaching yourself about this sort of more standard, I guess, artistic practice of oil on a canvas or on linen, did you feel like you needed to have that connection with those historical painters who did that, practiced in that way?
The idea of, I think it was more about getting out of the history and the influence of modern art. I thought, well, find your own starting point somewhere before modern art had started, because a large doubt about the system of modern art had been growing during my studies. And so I think that was the most important aspect, that I take something before modern art had started. And that's exactly the point where modern art started and the old-fashioned, old masterly painting had finished. And as well, parallel, of course, to historical developments, that was the end, 19th century, German emperor, that was the end of feudalism, the last feudal emperor in Europe, and was the beginning of modern art. So it's one of the last most important turning point in history on all levels, cultural levels, political levels, beginning of democracy, industrialization, blah, 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 blah.
So I was wondering then to what extent especially given that idea of access that we talked about earlier to your works, to what extent the viewer's understanding of the work is kind of in a way conditioned perhaps by a collective memory of arts and of art history, but also a political and a social collective memory, and if that plays into your ideas of
and
viewership.
It's conditioned by the very old, what do you call it, collective memory of the tribal times as well.
Tribal times.
Tribal.
Primal.
Tribal.
Tribal. Okay.
When we were still more like monkeys running around, but the perception still is conditioned by that very much. As we talked about the other day about the aspect of light. It's a very simple thing for the early human beings. Light was a very important thing to look at. The stars, as well as once fire was developed. It's still in us. When you're sitting in a cozy room with a chimney, everybody looks into the fire all the time. So I have to be aware of all these collective conditions of perception, of course.
That's quite interesting, because it seems like with a lot of your works, or almost all of your works, you're highlighting these moments of difference between dark and light, and that's the way you seem to articulate your work. So,
and what is left is just enough to be able to get access to a figurative identification, and that's not abstract. Abstract is, well, different, whatever it is.
So it's about providing as little as possible, then. So about providing as little information as possible in that case.
Every once in a while, like in that one. This is a bit more redundant, of course, but that's quite. Less is impossible. If one dot is missing, it doesn't work anymore.
So in that way, it's almost very, very methodical and very theoretical, the way that you're applying your paint. You have each brushstroke is exactly where it needs to be to make that work function right. And then, if you are missing one element, does it just, I mean, I guess my question kind of goes towards, you have multiple versions of different paintings in the room, and I'm curious how many times you experiment with each appropriation in each painting, and whether or not there's some that work and some don't, and how you deal with working between those different experiments.
Some don't work, that's right. You don't see the paintings that didn't work. I did a horse in that color. And I don't know why it didn't work. It didn't work. I didn't present, that's why I didn't present that. The idea was a dualism of the complementary colors. A blue block and an orange as a complementary color as well. So I thought, okay, have a blue violet horse and an orange horse, but the orange horse didn't work, I don't know. Or for this large one, I did the small ones first, because on the small scale you can try out quick. It's like writing. You can write like that, but not on a facade, or just too big to be quick and spontaneous. But once I did another one that's not on show. These two small line paintings, let's call them, were very important to do the big one, as very much in general on small paintings you can be spontaneous and quick, like this one is really a dramatic, has been a dramatic struggle. But on large scale paintings you have to be very clear and precise about what you want. There is no space for experiments. The only space that was a bit of a problem there was the foreground. These large brush strokes. It didn't work the same way with the same brush as the small ones. So I had to really think, oh, what to do. I had to change the ground. It was white on orange ground. So I had to take the white away, to wipe it off, cover the ground yet again with the orange, call it foundation, whatever, and try it again. And I hope it works okay. But sometimes when it looks precise, it is in fact not a result of a process that looks like precision. Had you been watching me doing the most important brush strokes on that painting, it did not at all look like precision. It was more kind of mental attack of fury. Like that, seriously. But it worked. It looks good, I hope. I think it looks good. But it could as well have failed. It's a very risky thing. Like this brush stroke of that size with color in it, in the brushes, that you don't know exactly, you cannot control.
In terms of brushstroke size, do you tend to limit yourself to a single brush type? Because it seems like in some of these works, especially these two small works, like it's just one brush that you continually change the colour or mix with. And so is that, again, another limitation?
It's not just one brush, it's brushes, several brushes with several colours, otherwise it's too dirty to. But around the same size. Yeah. To have a more strict formal appearance. But I should next time try the small one and a big one. One. It's more coherent when it's
too much change.
But one should try.
I was just wondering, returning to the subject matter of your work, I was wondering whether the thematic, the social and political and historical thematic of your pieces and the reading of those themes are in some way complicated or compromised by the abstraction of the pieces.
No, I think it's a different thing.
Yeah.
Politics is politics, history is history, Schnaps is Schnaps, painting is painting. It's in the air. But doing these works is a problem of craftsmanship. Craftsmanship, yeah. And thinking about it is different. When I'm working, I do not think about it, about the issues and the semantics and all this. This is like working in the coal mine instead of thinking about where to sell and how to sell and what the price is and what the for the head it's different regions probably. I must admit, even having been thinking too much about the semantics and the work, And nowadays with this kind of work I do think much more than before. Then coming back to the studio and start to work sometimes is difficult. Like it's a different program. It's not. It's still what's it called? Word program. Word and not Photoshop. It takes a while to switch from Word to Photoshop or from Excel to Photoshop. It's a little bit of a mental problem, seriously.
You've been working with painting for some time now, and really
31 years.
Sometime. And my question was, with this particular group of work, did you create them for this show in particular?
Yeah.
And do they diverge from what you've been doing previously, or are they more of an extension of your experiments?
Different. This attitude of doing a show on a specific subject matter, Germania Totale is the first time. In that extension, yes. And also these kind of works and these ones, they are, how do I say, kind of pretending to be, or not pretending, it is, in fact I did quite of an analytical step towards using the source material in a kind of analytical way, like these dark ones. As the title says, from the source, specific elements representing something whatsoever are isolated, Photoshop crop, the rest is black. And with the small ones, the two elements are the paper and the decorative applications of the clothing, which is the paper is authority or power, or the signifier of power, and what is yellow and red is the decor or the regalia of the person being in power, the representative. And in that one, it's paper as well. It is German General Graf Moltke. He's sitting on a chair, reading papers, or I think it's a map hanging down from a table, and letters or papers lying around on the ground. It's called the campaign seen as administrative representation. So the idea was, okay, this is during the German-French War. Graf Moltke was a very important general for the Germans to win this war, to come to the unification of Germany. So the paper lying around is kind of administration of the war the following day, maybe. You can doubt all these titles or find them funny, or think it's not really analytical. And I would agree that it's a bit. It's in the end have some different nice paintings hanging on the wall, or a sculpture. Strange, weird, funny sculpture.
I'm curious about the sculpture because it seems that most of the paintings on this site seem to be much brighter in color and simpler in their execution, whereas these seem to be much more labor-intensive and very dark. And this is a sort of divisive element, and why include it here in the direct center?
Pardon?
Does this act as a divisive element between the two halves of the show, or?
Yeah, it happened during the installation. We thought we looked for a place for this sculpture. Oh, the middle is good, yeah. Okay, then it's kind of the center of the spinning room with the two halves. there is a white rectangle here as well. That's why the paper, the head, is hanging on the edge, because there is another white rectangle, which is not really visible as the rest of the space is white as well. And that's another dualism or duality. Call it duality. The head, like there, could be, in this case, Germania d'Italia, well, Bismarck, Garibaldi, and excuse me. Ja, geht gerade nicht. Kann ich mich gleich melden? Mir ist irgendwie Video, bla bla bla. Okay, wir sehen uns gleich. The title is The Duality of Everything. A sketch for a memorial, comma, Bismarck/Garibaldi. So this is Bismarck or Garibaldi, and it's the duality of the good and the evil in these representatives of politics, or these powerful historical figures. And if you move here, you see the bad, the dark, the evil side of Garibaldi or Bismarck, and here you can see the good. Bismarck as a warlord, or Bismarck as the first social security for workers, for instance. But you can't see it really. I mean, it's connotation or.
You mentioned a stylistic theme on this side, and that you're highlighting the papers or their decorative elements of their clothing. And I'm wondering if there's the same stylistic unity to this side throughout the pages here.
It's a different thing. The starting point to come to these what do you call it? Appearance of painting was a funny story I made up in my role play as a curator of a funny, strange museum, somewhere provincial museum in Germania, Italia. I thought, well, in these museums, for didactic reasons, for educational reasons, often you have public displays with photographs of details of the other works on show, like I don't know what, to teach about some details of whatsoever. So we have a photograph of detail of one of the works in the museum, and this photograph is exposed to the public and to the sunlight for decades, and it fades away. Because this museum I'm a curator of is a very bad museum. We don't have money, we cannot change the public displays, so the color fades away. And that's it. Imagine that's a photograph of a pencil sketch of Bismarck's horse done by Anton von Werner, and the photograph has been exposed and the color has faded away. That's why I called content loss by information. No, content loss by communication. The more it's exposed, the more it's communicated, and the more it loses its information or content, which is of course just a strange metaphor. My mother. She always finds the right moment. Can you follow that weird blah blah somehow?
So it's unified by the story you've created.
Pardon?
It's unified by this story you've created in your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is if you want public display of a photograph or a sketch. This is a version of not of Overbeck himself, but there is a copper print of another artist at the same time with a very popular motif, this Germania d'Italia. So it was printed in copper a lot, often, and this is a photograph of the copper version of the Anton von Werner, and has been exposed to public, and the color has faded away.
And then this one of the same
theme?
Yeah.
Even a bit more. And this one is a diagram of a painting by Federico Farofini. In fact, it is a battle scene. And what the diagram shows is direction of the instruments for the perforation of the body. So just each line is either what do you call it, not a sword, this one, or is a gun with a knife on top. So that's why the order of the instruments, or the concept of the order of the instruments, or the concept of the armory. I hope in the end it's an attractive painting. If that's all, I would be even happy.
When you put together shows, is that something that you usually do? You come up with a story for the
No, this is the first time.
Okay.
Usually it's I've never done something following a subject matter with, like in this case, Germania d'Italia. Never before. Usually I do my paintings, and in the end the show is a museum-like, well done, harmonical, easy accessible mixture of portrait, landscape, interior, or maybe even still life. Small, huge, at least one large scale. So usually it's just an open variety, which in the end was a bit boring for me. So I'm quite happy I came to this idea of a didactic show.
Which for your future work, you can maybe continue this type of story?
Yes, probably. I have to find subject matters. I started with last year in Berlin at Galerionen in Berlin. I started with the subject matter of a monographic show on the German 19th century court painter Anton von Werner. This time is because a German painter moves to Italy, Germania d'Italia. I have to find more. And it's maybe a funny story that the idea of this didactic show actually came, I'm quite sure, after I had visited Documenta in Kassel. I haven't been to Documenta for decades. And I was went there with my students. They were, of course, interested, running around, and I was quite shocked, I must admit. I only made the Fridericianum and found myself sitting at the entrance and thinking and wondering, what's going on here? This is a Documenta? This is a supervisional show, we call it, on contemporary art. And all these poor visitors are standing in front of a sign, and not looking at the work. I mean, this was a kind of shock about how didactics in contemporary art, I thought, it's simply ridiculous. But it was there. It is there. It's I think even increasing. And then one morning, with a cup of coffee in my hand on the balcony, Well, you do the same play, but just as a play. Take the armory of your enemy and use it for yourself. I hope it works a little bit.
So do you find the press release a difficult thing to have in this show then, seeing as you're sort of moving away from having all of this information? Obviously we read the press release before we came here, before we saw the show, so...
I haven't read the press release actually.
Oh, okay, interesting. It mentions the word contemporary a lot, and your interest in the contemporary. And
I'm interested in the contemporary?
Yeah, and a sort of relationship between the...
Contemporary art?
Well, I think more the sort of drawing something from the past and bringing it into a contemporary moment, I think is more...
Yeah, that's more the point.
Yes, yeah. So, it may have less relevance now, but seeing as it's there, do you have anything to say on the way that you use that?
It's not dead, it's a part of history. What is alive? What is contemporary? The sentence I just said now is past, now is history. And I can say the sentence again. What is contemporary, what is past?
Yeah.
It's past now. That's why the subtitle of the show, The Continuance of the Contemporary. And I think it should be a good lesson for contemporary art to learn, or to start a bit more the doubt about the presence, about the hybris of contemporary. Yeah. When I look at contemporary art, look at the results on auctions, prices for contemporary artists, and compare it to the prices of old masters. There's always the idea of a terrible, embarrassing hybris. Hybris? Hybris. Hybris, yeah. So I'm trying to put it all a bit in to make it relative more, to look at it from Albert Einstein, the relativity of time and space.
Would you say that you're trying to maybe comment on going back to what I was asking earlier about the usage of sources, are you trying to comment on what people recognize, and are you trying to maybe insert these artists that you're using back into the canon or into something recognizable, or draw attention to them?
I didn't quite get it. Too complicated.
Are you trying to re-engage with historical artists in order to bring them into the now? Are you hoping people will look at their work or engage with that, or is this more just using the image for your own work?
I wouldn't mind all of it, but it's not my intention to put these poor art historically unimportant painters on a higher level. That's not my interest. The most important for me is to give the viewer an idea of the relativity of art and history and historicity and all that stuff. But I wouldn't mind all the rest of it, of course. I must admit, as a teacher, I'm teaching art now at a university for more than 10 years. I think the conscience of history is a bit declining. Sometimes I wonder what names my students don't know. Well, they know Picasso and Warhol, but Gerhard Richter, you cannot be sure they know it. So there's maybe a bit of a need of telling the people about the relativity of the contemporary.
Do you think that nowadays there is kind of a lack of collective memory?
You cannot call it collective, lack of knowledge about. I mean, if you want to a young person wants to become an artist, and they don't know Zygmunt Polka or Kazimir Malevich, there's something going wrong. Maybe art is too much in fashion. We talked about it yesterday. There are too many artists in the world now, and too little tailors and shoemakers, bootmakers, and these. That's a problem. Maybe art is in fashion. But it's good for us. We sell better because art is a party issue. But the other side, the dark side of this effect, there's a lot of money in the art world now, but little knowledge, probably. Two sides of the medal.
It also seems interesting that there would be that discrepancy of knowledge because there's such a proliferation of images and access to information in our world today, and you'd think that knowledge would just grow more, but it actually seems to be doing the reverse because all of the access is there, we don't need to retain it. So, I mean, do you deal with that ever with your work and people engaging with your work? In terms of having to deal with historical knowledge and historical access on their own, outside of the internet.
I don't know if my work can do that, but if a viewer comes to that conclusion, fine, great, wonderful. It's really the visual outside nowadays is kind of torture. Everything is everywhere at the same time, and then internet came, and internet makes it all accessible. In a way, internet is the death of historicity. I think everything is everywhere, all the time, accessible. Any question? And you think it's all present at the same time because it's accessible by the internet. It's a delicate thing on the consciousness of historicity.
So then I'm kind of curious, how do you find the images that you're going to appropriate? Do you already have that knowledge, or do you research, or do you...
I have to research a lot. And it's not easy because these are all unimportant, art historically unimportant, unappreciated artists.
So how do you choose which one to bring back into the artistic cycle?
I'm happy enough to at least find a few. There's not that much. Even in the internet, the Italian painters are not really present. I don't know why. I only started to work for this show in the summer, but I think I have to continue the research for material.
Obviously, a lot of these you've sort of developed sort of a story to go along with them, but a lot of your work, how do you decide, do you pick them based on aesthetic or based on their historical relevance, even though they're not well-known painters, or do you just choose them because you like the painting, or you can see how you're going to manipulate it, or how do you
I know what kind of work is usable for me. I know this is that kind of landscape. I have half a day left. Good work. This is risky. If I had half a day left to work, too risky. But this kind of the right one left. The landscape was done the day of the transport.
So for your work, you can't interrupt your process?
Pardon?
So for your work, you can't interrupt the process? Like you have to do it at one piece, or does it happen that you pick up the work the next day as well?
I could interrupt the work. But the problem is that the color starts to dry. And this is all wet in wet painting, and when it starts to dry, it's thrown away. Actually, it happened to the two blue ones. I started the left one first, and it took me weeks, and I wasn't satisfied at all. And Collezione Maramotti was pressurizing. We need an image for the advert, please. And I did the small one quite quickly and just sloppy, and it worked right from the start. As opposed to that one, it had taken weeks, 3 weeks. This was just a few minutes. And then I came back to that one and finished it. In a way, no, I'm very happy with it.
So the differences between those blue ones are more coincidental, or are they calculated?
No,
like the position of the...
Coincidental.
Coincidental.
The position is almost the same.
Almost.
It's projection.
Yeah.
and then
slightly more contrast, and that one.
Yeah, more contrast. Coincidentally, more sloppy brush stroke, more faded there. That happens.
Okay, that happened. Okay.
That's the process of painting. It's not. I mean, painting is not thinking. Painting is something like eating. Essential.
But then, with something like this larger work, is it more considered?
Yeah, of course.
Seeing as that, you know, it's a scaling up in a sense.
Yeah. This, for that you need a plan, a clear plan, and you have to be strict.
So you...
Same for the horse. I did a few horses before, didn't work, and then, okay, this is a solution, you have to do this, and projected it. A horse I had done beforehand, it worked fine. Was a quite large scale work as well. I did it the day before the transport. Projection, just next morning, great. And I put it on the show. Was not sold, but I think we would motif to reproduce here. And I started with the same attitude. Okay, projection and do like, but this time it didn't work. Just sloppy and out of control, no. So I found out, okay, the reason why the first version was so good was very coincidentally a good proportion and a good formal appearance of the detail. It was not just that any brush stroke or any outlining, any how do you call it? It was not arbitrary. It was very precise, but coincidentally, precision produced in a very sloppy manner. So I reproduced the old one, projected, and it worked.
Returning to the idea of knowledge that you were discussing earlier, I was just wondering...
Knowledge?
Yes, knowledge and the loss of knowledge.
Yeah.
I was wondering whether the works on this side of the room are in some way related to this idea that when there's a fading, you lose not just the content, but the context as well, in which that content is inserted, and the dangers associated to that as well.
Yeah, it's a nice idea. Yeah. Content loss by communication. Communicate what is happening outside is as well in a way content loss or loss of knowledge or loss of precision by too much of blah 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 communication. It's a good idea. I remember you. Content loss by communication. I'm happy that you come to that idea by talking about it and looking at it. It seems to be in the air.
Yeah. And that idea that it's not just the moment of the production of the artwork as well, but then its exhibition and how that affects it in terms of the very natural way it's affected, but also and how that then influences the way viewers perceive it as it degrades. It's interesting.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your interest. My pleasure.